is the Rosetta Stone. It was the key to understanding Egyptian hieroglyphics, and it is one of the most precious and valuable treasures of the British Museum.
AI has unlocked the Rosetta Stone's last symbols, and the result is terrifying. Words lost for millennia now expose secrets that rewrite ancient history. What was once a puzzle is now a revelation, and the truth is darker than anyone dared imagine. The ancient world's hidden story is finally out, and it's worse than we thought. Let's discover what AI unlocked, the discovery that changed Egypt's past. It started during an extremely hot summer in Egypt, in the late days of July during the 18th century. Napoleon's troops were spread across the region, constructing military installations, fixing buildings, digging defensive positions, and trying to survive in the challenging and scorching environment. Close to a small town called Rashid, which Europeans referred to as Rosetta, a young engineering officer named Pierre-François Boussard was overseeing repair work at an old damaged military fort called Fort Julien. While his soldiers were taking down a crumbling wall, something peculiar caught his eye. A dark, polished stone slab was hidden among the debris, marked with carefully arranged lines of writing. The stone immediately stood out from the surrounding rubble. Boussard instantly recognized that this was no ordinary rock. He halted the demolition work, made sure the stone was carefully lifted, and quickly sent a message to Cairo. By mid-July in 1799, the intriguing stone was already being transported to the capital for more detailed examination. The soldiers discovered something far more significant than a valuable artifact or artwork. What they found was a piece of a very old royal proclamation dating back over 2 millennia. The remarkable stone document contained the same message written in 3 different writing systems. The top section was inscribed using ancient Egyptian picture-based writing called hieroglyphs. The middle section used a more simplified Egyptian script known as demotic. The bottom section was written in the Greek language. A group of priests from Memphis created this decree to celebrate their young monarch, Ptolemy V. The discovery was groundbreaking precisely because it contained 3 different language versions. Since Greek was still a known language, scholars could use it as a translation tool to finally understand Egypt's mysterious and previously unreadable ancient writings. Here's the paraphrased text, sentence by sentence. The stone wasn't as massive as people later remembered or imagined it to be. It was a solid, compact piece of dark rock with a speckled appearance, made from granodiorite, a type of volcanic stone that's even tougher than granite. Small pink and gray mineral specks would glimmer softly when light fell across its surface. The stone slab was roughly the height of an average person's shoulders, a bit wider than a typical doorway, and about as thick as a large book. Its total weight was close to the same as a small grand piano. Transporting such a heavy piece of rock would have mandated careful teamwork, using ropes, wooden rollers, and the coordinated effort of many strong workers. The historical background of this artifact emerged during a period of military tension. Following a lengthy blockade, French troops in Alexandria were forced to surrender to a joint British and Ottoman military operation. The surrender agreement, called the Capitulation of Alexandria, included a requirement that all historical artifacts collected by Napoleon's researchers be transferred. This condition specifically applied to the dark, inscribed stone that was found near the town of Rosetta. By early 1802, the stone had been transported to England. It was initially shown to the Society of Antiquaries, a group of historical researchers. Shortly afterward, the stone was put on public display at the British Museum, where it remains to this day. White painted text was added to the stone's sides explaining that it was captured in Egypt by British forces in 1801 and then gifted to the nation by King George III. In Cairo, before the ancient stone was removed from Egypt, a printer named Jean-Joseph Marcel made copies of the stone's surface, which helped researchers carefully study the text. Another inventor, Nicolas-Jacques Conté, who had been injured in battle and lost an eye, took this technique to the next level. He applied ink directly to the stone and then pressed wet paper onto it, which allowed the carved letters to transfer perfectly and create exact reverse images of the original inscriptions. This method made it much simpler for researchers to examine every detail of the text without having to physically move or handle the heavy stone tablet. The group of historical researchers in London created detailed replicas of the artifact for several prestigious universities in the United Kingdom. Within a very short time, printed and hand-copied versions of the artifact's details were being distributed throughout Europe. Some of these copies even made their way to the United States. These duplicate versions enabled academics from different regions to carefully examine the writing and start the complex process of decoding and interpreting the ancient scripts. How light and code help the stones speak again. Modern scientific tools now allow researchers to examine the Rosetta Stone surface with extraordinary precision, revealing markings that are invisible to regular human vision. These advanced digital scans produce detailed images that highlight even the most subtle indentations and scratches in the stone's surface. Using powerful computer algorithms trained on thousands of hieroglyphic examples, researchers can now analyze these patterns and make educated guesses about which symbols might have originally been in damaged or missing sections. This approach doesn't involve creating new historical information or fabricating text that didn't exist before. Instead, the computer program carefully analyzes the damaged areas by comparing them with intact parts of the text and other known versions of the same historical document, then intelligently predicts the most probable original symbols. The original meaning of the official decree has always been clear. The text celebrates King Ptolemy V for his kind actions, like lowering taxes, giving land to religious sites, releasing prisoners, and creating statues of gods. The decree also specified that it should be written in 3 different languages and displayed in every important temple. This was done to ensure that people in positions of knowledge and power, including priests, writers, and Greek government officials, could easily read and understand it. Historically, the Rosetta Stone was crucial in helping researchers rediscover ancient Egyptian language. Today, it serves a new purpose, acting as a connection between traditional academic research and modern technology. Artificial intelligence is now helping scholars uncover the final, barely visible symbols on the stone that previous generations couldn't read. By combining advanced lighting techniques and digital technology, researchers are achieving what even the most brilliant scholars of the 19th century could not accomplish. These modern tools are helping to reveal the complete story of the stone, essentially allowing it to speak once again. Under the rough and damaged exterior of the Rosetta Stone, an ancient message from over 2 millennia ago remains concealed. The stone's surface is marked by cuts, broken pieces, and gradual wear from centuries of existence. Instead of jumping straight into translation, scientists first focused on carefully examining the artifact. They used advanced technology and specialized tools that could reveal details invisible to the naked human eye. Light was the first crucial tool in this research project. The research team started by taking multiple photographs of the entire surface repeatedly. In each photograph, they adjusted the lighting slightly. They experimented with light coming from various angles, heights, and directions. Even a minor change in lighting can cause a shallow groove to create a tiny shadow or make a raised surface appear more luminous. By combining all these photographs, they created a height map, which is essentially a 3D representation showing every tiny elevation and depression on the surface. This process transformed the stone into a digital terrain that can be rotated, zoomed in on, and examined from every possible angle. When researchers manipulate the light on this digital model, incredibly tiny details become visible. Areas that previously seemed completely smooth now reveal intricate marks that were almost imperceptible before. Just looking at an object's shape doesn't tell the whole story. The Rosetta Stone was originally painted with colors, but over time, most of the paint has disappeared. However, tiny bits of the original paint are still hidden deep within the stone's carved lines. To uncover these hidden traces, researchers used a special type of advanced photography called hyperspectral imaging. Unlike regular cameras that only capture red, green, and blue colors, these special cameras can detect hundreds of different light shades. Some of these light shades are so subtle that human eyes can't even see them. When exposed to specific wavelengths of light, the ancient minerals and paint remnants inside the stone's grooves react in unique ways. These reactions can cause the hidden materials to either glow brightly, or become darker in specific patterns. Areas that look completely blank under normal lighting can suddenly reveal faint outlines of lost symbols. By collecting and combining these invisible colors into a single digital image, experts can bring long-forgotten details back to life. Despite progress, the challenge is far from complete. Once the markings are revealed through light and color, a new hurdle emerges. Unlike today's writing, ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs don't follow a simple orderly layout. These symbols are creatively arranged, frequently intersecting and piling on top of each other. Imagine images of birds positioned above bread symbols. Serpent figures might appear next to reed illustrations. For a computer, this intricate design looks like a jumbled network of lines. To overcome this complexity, scientists developed a smart computer program capable of recognizing and tracing each individual symbol separately. The researchers used thousands of pictures featuring different Egyptian hieroglyphic symbols like falcons, eyes, snakes, and ropes to teach their computer system. As they showed more images, the computer gradually learned to recognize the unique shapes and specific details of each symbol. Even though the original computer model was created to identify common things like people or cars in regular photographs, they modified it extensively to handle a specialized task of tracing and separating ancient stone carvings. AI learns the rhythm of ancient writing. Before all of the progress in reading and restoring ancient Egyptian jotting are two important systems that made it possible for computers to fetch hieroglyphs in the first place. These systems gave ultra-modern systems the structure, training material, and clear guidance demanded to understand symbols that were sculpted thousands of times agone. Together, they created the strong base that allows experimenters a moment to study indeed damaged eulogies with much less confidence. The first of these systems is Google's Fabricius. Introduced in the time 2020, Fabricius offered scholars, learners, and the wider public an online way to explore Egyptian symbols directly. It allowed druggies to look through different hieroglyphs, understand their shapes, and help label them for training data. Every marker, every precisely pronounced sign, and every digital entry came part of a growing pool of information. This helped the system learn how real busts appear, how analogous symbols differ, and how they bear in different forms. Because numerous people could share, the quantum of data increased snappily, giving experimenters a digital space where hieroglyphs could be studied with ease. The alternate major design was Ubisoft's Hieroglyphics Action. This trouble was erected with the help of Egyptologists who understood the language and its long history. The action brought together thousands of hand-tagged images of hieroglyphs. Each image carried careful markings made by experts, which allowed computers to learn from material that was both accurate and detailed. These images tutored AI how each symbol is shaped, how it fits into a line of textbook, and how it may appear on different shells or in varied figure styles. When combined, these hand-tagged exemplifications formed a rich tutoring set for ultra-modern systems. Together, Fabricius and the Ubisoft Action gave ultra-modern AI a strong foundation. With these coffers, computers could begin to fetch individual hieroglyphs and connect them to meanings, patterns, and known forms. These systems also made it possible to compare numerous samples of the same sign, helping systems understand natural variation while still relating the correct symbol. Because of this participating route, experimenters can approach damaged eulogies with tools that are much more dependable and much more informed than anything available in once generations. When the AI models suggest possible readings for a damaged line, they do not simply give an answer. Rather, experimenters take the coming step, which is to check the suggestions with trusted sources. This is the point where Egypt's great word books and databases come especially important. The Gloss Linguae Egyptiae is one of the most precious tools for understanding ancient Egyptian jotting. It lets scholars search through every known appearance of a word across 3,000 times of recorded textbooks. By doing this, experimenters can see how a word was used, where it appeared, and how its meaning may have changed across different ages. This broad range of exemplifications helps confirm whether an AI suggestion indeed makes sense in the wider history of the language. Another important reference is the Chicago Demotic Dictionary. This work was erected sluggishly over numerous decades and explains how each word worked in diurnal life. in legal systems, in trade, and in religious jotting. The word book focuses on the same type of language used in the middle section of the Rosetta Stone, which makes it especially helpful when checking restored lines. Scholars can test whether a proposed word truly fits the style, operation, and meaning anticipated for that kind of textbook. These references act like arbiters. They help determine whether an AI suggestion is respectable or incorrect. However, it cannot be accepted if a suggested word breaks the rules of Egyptian grammar. However, it's likely rejected if it uses a term that doesn't appear anywhere differently in 3,000 times of jotting. But if the suggestion matches a known expression that appears in another interpretation of the decree, also it passes the test. These causes ensure that restored lines stay predicated in real substantiation rather than suppositions. A major strength of these AI tools is the way they show their work. They do not hide the process that leads to a suggested reading. Systems similar as Ithaca and Anais easily list every cause they compared and every expression that matched. They also show the position of confidence for each suggestion, giving experimenters a sense of how strong or weak a match may be. This openness allows any scholar to retrace the sense step by step. They can review the comparisons, examine the matches, and decide whether the model's logic makes sense. This translucency builds trust and helps prevent crimes from slipping into important conclusions. Indeed, with these strengths, the technology still has limits, and experts are careful to admire those limits. AI cannot recreate busts that nowadays were. It cannot make up marks that have faded ever. Scholars are alert to the peril of forcing the fit, a situation where necrology is interpreted in a way that matches the model's vaccination rather than the physical substantiation. To avoid this, the physical gravestone always comes first. However, the physical mark takes precedence if a three-dimensional checkup shows a groove or mark that doesn't agree with the model's reading. No digital vaticination can replace what's sculpted into the gravestone. The physical space on the gravestone is another strict guide. However, also the suggestion must be wrong if a suggested word would take up further room than the sculpted line allows. Also, if a proposed symbol doesn't match the depth, angle, or wind of the original groove, it cannot be accepted. These rules ensure that restored lines stay true to the real object, not to suppositions shaped by software. Experts use the technology as a helpful tool, but no way allow it to stamp the material's substantiation. Now that the missing lines have eventually reappeared through careful analysis, better imaging, and transparent digital styles, a new and important question arises. Scholars want to understand what these restored words say. They want to know whether these recently visible lines change anything about the decree itself. They also want to see whether the recovered textbook shifts our understanding of the preachers who wrote it, the political world in which it was created, or the youthful king whose praises filled the necrology. These questions guide the coming stage of exploration. The restored lines hold meaning that may bring further clarity to the decree's purpose, its structure, and its communication. They may also help scholars compare this interpretation with other clones set up across ancient Egypt. By studying the recovered lines precisely, experimenters can see whether any details were lost, repeated, or saved from one position to another. Modern AI rebuilds lost hieroglyphs. An alternate kind of AI plays an important part in restoring the missing corridor of ancient Egyptian jotting. This AI works in a way that feels near to how people understand language. Ultra-modern motor models, analogous to the bones used in Moments restatement software, learn the inflow and meter of words. In this design, they learn the meter of hieroglyphs, By studying thousands of Egyptian textbooks, these models begin to see that certain symbols frequently appear together. In the same way that thank in English is generally followed by you, hieroglyphs also follow familiar patterns. This kind of pattern literacy is what helps the system fill in missing places on damaged monuments. When the edge of the gravestone breaks and many signs vanish, the model looks at the symbols ahead and after the gap and predicts what most likely belongs in between. This is the core idea behind a recent design known as the iconographic motor. Experimenters erected this model using data from the Berlin-grounded Thesaurus Linguae Egyptii. which is the largest collection of Egyptian jottings in the world. By training the model on this huge dataset, they created a system that takes sequences of hieroglyphs and suggests which signs may be missing. It isn't making wild or arbitrary suppositions. Rather, it uses the natural habits of the ancient language to constrict down realistic options. This pairing of two types of AI, one that recognizes shapes and one that understands environment, is what makes the ultra-modern Rosetta design so effective. The visual model identifies the busts that still live, while the language model fills in the missing spaces with careful, pattern-grounded suggestions. Working together, they can restore lines that haven't been completely readable since ancient times. The roots of this system come from earlier work on other ancient scripts. At the age of 2019, experimenters created an AI system named Pythia. This system could prognosticate missing letters in damaged Greek eulogies. When a gravestone had deep cracks or missing corridors, Pythia compared the broken textbook to thousands of complete Greek examples and produced a short list of possible results. In about 3 out of 4 cases, the correct restoration appeared within its top suggestions. An after system called Ithaca expanded this approach indeed further. Ithaca didn't just restore the missing textbook, it could also estimate when the jotting was created and where it came from. Tests showed that chroniclers working with Ithaca completed their work briskly and with better delicacy than ahead. These early successes helped make the path for the models now used on the Rosetta Stone. For the Rosetta Stone, this kind of language-grounded AI is especially precious. Several surviving clones of the same decree still live, sculpted in different places similar as Nubra and Philae. Because of this, AI can compare all performances at formerly and incontinently punctuate corresponding sections. A process that formerly wanted long hours of cross-referencing and homemade checking can now be completed in seconds. The idea continued to grow, and by the time 2025, the same approach had reached Latin textbooks. DeepMind introduced an AI system named Anais, designed to search damaged Latin jottings for matches in other ancient causes. This system can overlook both textbook and images to find fractions that contain the same names, expressions, or repeated patterns. When all these systems work together, the restoration of the Rosetta Stone becomes smooth and precisely structured. The process begins with erecting the clearest possible image of the gravestone. Experimenters take thousands of photos under different lighting angles and also blend them to make a detailed 3-dimensional chart of the entire face. Indeed, the faintest busts, the bones too shallow or soft to see with the mortal eye, come visible through this fashion. After the face is counterplotted, the coming step is running an AI that outlines every remaining sign. Once each figure is captured, it's turned into a digital ID, like a bitsy point that identifies the figure. It can say a commodity like "this is a falcon" or "this is a wimp splint." With these digital IDs in place, the symbols can also be aligned with the other 2 scripts on the gravestone, Demotic and Greek. All 3 scripts carry the same communication, sculpted side by side, so matching them helps produce a complete structure. When the iconographic section is broken or missing, the system doesn't stop. It automatically checks the other surviving clones of the decree set up in different locales across Egypt. However, the model uses that complete judgment as a companion. If a missing judgment on the Rosetta Stone appears in full on the interpretation set up at Nubra, the Greek script on the Rosetta Stone also helps because its clear rows of letters show how long each line of the textbook should be. By comparing the lengths of the lines across all 3 languages, the AI can estimate how numerous hieroglyphs belong in the missing space. The process continues by gathering all surviving performances and aligning every piece. By bringing the Greek, Demotic, and iconographic textbooks into one coordinated structure, the system finds patterns in line lengths, repeated expressions, and matching ideas. Each script strengthens the others. When one language is broken or missing, another language supports it. The missing lines and the true picture. When the missing lines of the Rosetta Stone were eventually restored, the entire arbor changed. It no longer felt like a damaged artifact holding fractions of old rulings. Rather, it came with a complete and vibrant record of how ancient Egypt truly worked. These recovered lines turned the gravestone into a clear window showing politics, power, plutocracy, responsibility, and survival in a world that was further than 2,000 times agone. The familiar monument suddenly gained new life, revealing a detailed system shaped by pressure, need, and careful agreements that held the area together. Further than 2,000 times agone, Egypt was trying to rebuild itself after times of trouble and complaint. The country had gone through long ages of conflict and insecurity, and now it demanded balance. By this time, a sovereign named Ptolemy V sat on the throne, guiding an area that was still healing. His challenge wasn't only to lead, but also to unite a land filled with different forces, pulling in different directions. Among these forces, the strongest group wasn't the dog faces who guarded the borders, nor the governors who managed original regions, but the preachers. They held extraordinary influence over diurnal life, spiritual life, and frugality. These preachers were further than religious numbers. They were directors, caretakers of tabernacles, and defenders of wealth and land. Tabernacles were important institutions, and the preachers controlled enormous coffers. They managed cropland, collected immolations, supervised carnivals, and acted as the voice of the gods. Because of this, they held sway over the people, and their support was essential for any sovereign who wanted peace and cooperation throughout the area. The Rosetta Stone decree, formerly all the missing pieces were put back together, showed exactly how important this relationship was. The full textbook reads like an agreement, a collective understanding sculpted into gravestones so that all could see it. It functions nearly like a written contract between the king and the religious leaders. The restored lines show how both sides offered commodities in exchange for stability and harmony. Ptolemy V demanded the fidelity of the preachers, and the preachers demanded protection, recognition, and security in return. In the restored communication, the king subventions benefits that supported the preachers, the tabernacles, and the wider community. These were not small gifts. They included fiscal relief, duty reductions, and colorful kinds of remission intended to ease burdens. At the same time, the preachers promised spiritual support through prayers, observances, and fests that strengthened the king's image and authority. Their part was to recognize him, ensure godly favor, and present him as the due sovereign cherished by the gods. The decree lists veritably clear and specific particulars. It mentions plutocrats, reductions in duty payments, grain allowances, and acts of mercy that brought relief to numerous. These benefits were structured to support dog faces, growers, and tabernacle workers, allowing different corridors of society to breathe a little easier. In return, the preachers committed to diurnal prayers meant to cover the king, grand carnivals designed to keep the area united, and conventional cycles that reminded everyone of the king's sacred position. Among all three scripts on the gravestone, iconographic, demotic, and Greek, it is the Greek textbook that gives the most precise explanation. The Greek portion offers a clean and straightforward summary of the king's conduct. It states that Ptolemy V reduced some levies and abolished others entirely. These opinions were made to support both dog faces who defended the nation and growers who fed the population. It shows that fiscal relief was meant to stabilize the area at every position. The Greek textbook also confirms that tabernacles retained their own income without hindrance. Their lands, stations, tableware, and grain were defended. Nothing could be removed or taken into government power. This meant that tabernacles stayed financially strong, allowing them to continue their vital part in society. The restored lines also make it clear that the duty rate for the preachers themselves was permanently firmed. It couldn't be raised in the future, giving the preachers long-term security. All of this may look like plain executive detail, but in ancient Egypt, this was the foundation of survival. These measures weren't small adaptations. They were essential ways that kept the country performing and averted new swells of uneasiness. Strong tabernacles meant strong communities, clear agreements meant smaller conflicts, and stable levees meant people could breathe later times of pressure. With these restored lines, the gravestone shows exactly how deeply fiscal opinions shaped the stability of the land. Alongside politics, plutocrat, and power, the decree also speaks about compassion. This part of the restored textbook gives another subcast to the communication. It shows that the king was not only making agreements with important preachers, he was also seeking to show kindness in ways that helped ordinary people. The decree refers to conduct meant to ease rigors and restore peace. These moments of mercy remind us that leadership in ancient Egypt was not only about control, but also about setting requirements and offering relief when possible. With the missing lines now complete, the Rosetta Stone becomes much further than a tool that helps scholars understand hieroglyphs. It becomes a full record of how a nation tried to rebuild itself after chaos. It illustrates how a king negotiated support, how preachers maintained influence, and how both sides depended on each other to keep Egypt stable. It shows the practical choices that shaped diurnal life: duty changes, grain inventories, carnivals, prayers, rites, rules, and participating liabilities. The restored lines also help us see how precisely balanced power was. The king had authority, but his strength depended on cooperation. The preachers had influence, but their stability depended on royal recognition. The gravestone captures this delicate relationship and shows how both sides worked to cover their positions in a world where survival wanted cooperation.